In a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Washington, D.C., two patrol officers thought they were having an ordinary day until they made a mistake that would change their lives forever. When they pulled over a sleek black SUV, they assumed it was just another routine stop. But what started as arrogance fueled by prejudice quickly escalated into an act of gross misconduct. They handcuffed a calm, composed black woman who carried herself with the authority of someone far above their understanding. Moments later, as she made a single phone call that reached the Pentagon, their smug expressions faded into sheer terror. They had just violated the dignity of a decorated U.S. Army general, one whose influence reached the highest echelons of power. What followed was not just a lesson in justice, but a reckoning for those who thought their badge made them untouchable. The day had begun like any other four officers, Dan Wilkins and Craig Murphy, two small-town cops who often felt the need to remind others of their authority. Their precinct was quiet that afternoon, with only minor reports coming in. So when a black SUV rolled through a yellow light at the intersection of Jefferson Avenue, Wilkins smirked and said, "Looks like we got one." The vehicle wasn't speeding or weaving, but something about the driver caught their attention, perhaps her calm demeanor, or maybe, as was too often the case, the color of her skin. They followed her for a few blocks before activating their sirens. Inside the SUV sat Brigadier General Angela Morrison, a woman whose name carried weight across the Pentagon halls. She was returning from a classified meeting, still in partial uniform, her insignia clearly displayed on her shoulder, but Wilkins didn't notice or didn't care. As she pulled over, the officers approached with the swagger of men who thought they had power. "License and registration," Wilkins barked, his tone sharp, almost mocking. General Morrison complied calmly, her voice steady, respectful even, though she had every reason not to be. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked. Murphy circled the SUV, peering through the windows as if looking for something wrong. "We'll be the ones asking questions," Wilkins snapped. When she asked why she was being stopped, Wilkins muttered something about failure to stop at a red. The exchange grew tense. When Morrison reached for her, ID'd her military identification card, which Murphy immediately interpreted as resisting. Within moments, both officers had drawn her from the vehicle, handcuffing her beside the car despite her calm protests. "You're making a mistake," she said softly, as the metallic click of the cuffs echoed in the air. They laughed, assuming she was bluffing, but the cold precision in her tone wasn't fear, it was warning. She knew exactly how far this was about to go, and how deep their mistake would cost them. As she stood in cuffs beside her SUV, the absurdity of the moment unfolded like a tragic performance. The bystanders filming with their phones couldn't believe what they were seeing. A uniformed officer of the United States military being humiliated in broad daylight. Wilkins strutted around like a man who believed the world owed him obedience, while Murphy searched her car, tossing aside folders and classified-looking envelopes without a shred of respect. Morrison stayed still, her expression unreadable, her eyes calm yet piercing. She knew the law better than both men combined. "You're tampering with federal property," she said evenly, but Wilkins waved her off. "Lady, you're not special," he sneered. "You people always think you can get away with anything." The words stung the air like venom, drawing gasps from those nearby. A young boy recording whispered, "She's a soldier, man. Look at her jacket." But the officers were too consumed by their prejudice to notice. When the situation reached its boiling point, Morrison asked for her phone, her voice still calm. "I'd like to make a call." Wilkins laughed. "Yeah, sure. You can call whoever you want when we're done processing you." She smiled faintly, as if she knew a secret he didn't. "You might want to step back," she said quietly. Using the emergency button on her smartwatch, she triggered a secure line to the Pentagon's Office of Military Command. Within seconds, her GPS location was transmitted, and the system flagged an incident involving a high-ranking officer. When the line connected, she simply said, "This is General Angela Morrison. I've been unlawfully detained by local police. Activate protocol, Sierra." Her voice was firm, controlled, carrying authority that immediately stirred panic in the operations center. The dispatcher on the other end confirmed her identity and location. The moment she ended the call, her demeanor shifted from restrained patience to commanding presence. The officers didn't yet understand what she had unleashed, but soon the faint rumble of approaching vehicles in the distance would make it clear. Within minutes, the quiet suburban street transformed into a scene out of a government operation. Black SUVs and unmarked vehicles screeched to a halt around the scene as federal officers and military police poured out, forming a perimeter. Wilkins and Murphy froze, confusion painted across their faces. One of the arriving officers barked, "Release her, now," Murphy stammered. Who are you people?" But before he could finish, a sharply dressed Pentagon security officer stepped forward, flashing credentials. "You just assaulted and unlawfully detained a United States Army Brigadier General," he said coldly. Wilkins's face went pale. He looked at Morrison, who was now standing tall as the cuffs were removed from her wrists. She didn't shout, didn't gloat. She simply turned to face them with quiet authority. "You made a choice," she said, her voice steady. "You profiled, you disrespected, and you forgot your oath to serve without bias. The two officers tried to apologize, but the damage was already irreversible. Pentagon officials took statements, and the dashcam footage was immediately secured. The videos from bystanders had already gone viral within hours, drawing national outrage. The department issued a press release calling it a misunderstanding, but the truth was undeniable. Both officers were suspended pending investigation, and within weeks, terminated from duty. The state attorney's office launched a civil rights inquiry, and Morrison herself was invited to speak publicly about the incident. Her words resonated nationwide not out of vengeance, but as a call for reform and accountability. Respect must be given to every citizen, not demanded through force, she said during a televised interview. Authority means nothing without integrity. The story became a symbol of reckoning for policing practices and a reminder that rank, color, or uniform should never dictate the value of one's dignity. For Wilkins and Murphy, their careers were over, but for General Morrison, it was only the beginning of a larger mission, to ensure that what happened to her would never happen to another person again.